Hey everyone, and welcome to the blog. This is episode 93, and I just wanted to do a follow-up video and spend about 15 minutes with some clarifications on my last two videos. Because when you get into covering religion, you are bound to step on a lot of toes. And so, with that being said, I'd like to just make some clarifications that as far as Muslims and Islam go, I have adopted parents and family that are Muslim, and I don't have anything against Muslims in general. I studied Islam while I was going to Bible college, and I was the only one of my peers who wound up going to a mosque, a local masjid, and studying Islam and talking to imams and mullahs in person. So when I talk about Islam, keep in mind that I have a lot of friends and family who are Muslims, and so I don't, Muslims are victims of Islam and of other Muslims in a lot of cases. So when I talk about Islam, I'm coming from a point of view of I've fasted with Muslims during the month of Ramadan many times, and I've provided food from former businesses that I've managed to the Muslim community during Ramadan. I've also myself provided food, like from my own end, and orchestrated some things for the Muslim community during Ramadan and to help out with the community. I've also myself helped Muslims with things that they need around their houses, and widows and whatnot. Helped widows around their houses and whatnot. So I don't have anything against the Muslim people. I feel like Muslims and Christians and Jewish people and humanity in general are victims of their circumstances. So we're all being tricked, and we're victims of the things that we aren't educated on. And so when I talk about spirituality, I feel like I kind of fast-tracked a lot of education that people maybe would learn over the course of their whole life, or in some cases people just never learn. And a lot of things that I learned about spirituality and religion, people learn as they're into retirement or on their deathbed. So I've had a few near-death experiences, and there was a point in my life in my teens where I didn't want to live anymore. So I fast-tracked my own near-death experience to the point where I was in the hospital a few times and really coming to grips with mortality at a young age. And so now, like, I'm 35 years old, and sometimes I feel like I'm 70, sometimes I feel like I'm ancient in a younger body. And a lot of that is because emotionally, I kind of took the fast track for a lot of these topics that we're talking about. And so there's a lot of things I don't know about. Like my girlfriend Desiree was saying last night, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're so intelligent on so many things." And it's not true. Like, I don't know anything about ballet. I don't know anything about football. I don't know anything about soccer or hockey. I don't want to know anything about those things. So there's topics in life that you're going to be more familiar with and more educated on than I am, and vice versa. So that's just the way it is, and here we are. So, and as far as Christians, I wanted to mention that people can say, "Oh, well, God may not be vegan for Judaism and Islam, but the God of the Bible and Christianity is vegan." It's not true. If you look at Acts chapter 15, you can see where the first church, the congregation is having problems with the new converts from the surrounding Roman and Greece areas, and they don't know what to do with these converts who are coming in and have all this baggage. It's like the beginning of the Roman Catholic Empire, right? So they have all these converts that are coming in, and they don't know what to do with them, so they say, okay, well, we have a really strict kosher diet, the Jewish community, and we can't expect to impose the Torah on the Gentiles that are coming from the surrounding areas, but we can tell them to abstain from things that are offered to idols and abstain from foods that are strangled and from sexual immorality. And so in that, context, you get a picture of the original Jewish church leadership who understood that the Torah was being taught in synagogues, and they understood that the new converts to Christianity, or to this, the way, or the religion of the Messiah, they understood that the new converts would be educated by the Torah, so they assumed that they would adopt, in time, a kosher diet. And so the kosher diet is, as I referred to earlier, no shellfish, and no pork, and there's a lot of restrictions on insects, if you're going to get into that you can read up on in Leviticus chapter 11. So, Paul, the apostle, who's not really an apostle because the other 11 apostles actually wound up replacing Judas or Yehuda after he betrayed the Messiah. They replaced Yehuda with Matthias, I think it is. You'd have to check this out for yourself. But the Apostle Paul, the self-proclaimed Apostle Paul in the New Testament, who wound up writing like 3/4 of the New Testament, is actually not an apostle according to the actual apostles, but he is a self-proclaimed apostle. Not that he's not a believer or whatever, but that's a whole other story. So this guy wrote a few times that while you can, those who are weak eat only vegetables, and those who are strong, can eat anything because they know that an idol is nothing. So he was referring to people in this context, to people who eat animals and are worried because there's a lot of Roman temples and Greek god temples, and these pieces of meat are being offered there, and they're worried about contaminating their faith. It's another good point that when you talk about Islam, you have Zabiha slaughtermen who have to literally say Allahu Akbar as they slice the animal's throat. And that's something that is actually written about throughout the Quran in Surah 2, 5, 6, and 16, I believe. If you read through the Quran, which is not that big of a ordeal. Like, the Bible, what we call the canonical Bible, is a book of 66 different books by over 40 different authors on a period of like 3,000 years on 2 or 3 different continents. Whereas the Quran, it's really hard to compare them because the Quran is dictated by one person over a course of, say, 30 years. Some people say the Quran came down during the month of Ramadan. So there's debate about whether it came down, was orated, translated, recited in 30 years in the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime. Clearly he's the one who had to recite it. Or did it come in 30 days? Reading the Quran, it's organized from longest chapter or surah to shortest. So it starts off really heavy and then winds up just in a couple of verses, right? So again, I've talked about this in the last video, but it's hard to compare them. You can't really compare the Bible to the Quran, and a lot similarly to the Book of Mormon, where Joseph Smith has this revelation. It's like, we're just going to clarify all the mistakes that are in the Torah and the Injil and the Gospel, because everybody knows there's mistakes, right? And there's mistranslations, and there's so many translations. Fun fact, what I used to do is get a different translation every time I read through the Bible, and one of my favorites was the Hebraic Roots version, because instead of using things like the Lord or Jesus, it would actually give a more true definition of what the original language was. Another fun fact is that the original Messiah, and then his 12 disciples, they would have been speaking Hebrew or Aramaic. These people weren't speaking Greek, so when you see pictures and text in Greek, you know that it's a translation from the original Gospels would have been written in Hebrew. Fun fact. So, and I got into arguments like this in Bible college, and I was proven right, and it didn't matter because there was an agenda. And so, the God of the Bible is not vegan, and when you talk about gods that, okay, well, there is a vegan God. Well, you're making up a God, and anybody can make up a God. And I kind of ended my last video with saying, well, anybody can make up idols. So there's 7 billion people in the known world, and everybody has their own ideas of God, and whatever God idea you have of God is inside your mind, and whatever idea I have of the gods is inside my mind. And so you're projecting outwards your idea of God onto whatever this mysterious magical being is. So how can we have any common understanding of what God is? And this is why we refer to religious texts and scriptures, because then we have some sort of common agreement. And so when you talk about God loosely, or you talk about the God of the Bible, there's two different things, right? So we can observe the God in the Bible, and we can bicker about, okay, well, the God would never do that. And then I can refer you to, okay, well, look at Leviticus chapter 11, look at Exodus, look at 1 John chapter 4, verse 8, and I can show you Bible verses where, okay, well, if we're going to talk about the God of the Bible, then I can show you from the book of the Bible itself, which a lot of people don't even read, including pastors, that this is what the God of the Bible is like, and we can form a personality and a character, right? So when I say the God of the Bible is a mass murderer, I can draw from a lot of scriptures, and like Noah's flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, and I can just continue on going. But you get my point, that the God of the Bible has had a history of wiping people out, including a whole tribe of Israel and a whole generation of Israel where they were wandering through the desert. Like the entire older generation was wiped out, and then the younger ones wound up inheriting the land flowing with milk and honey. And fun fact, milk and honey are not vegan, and Israel didn't flow with milk and honey. It has cows and bees. So cows and bees and plagiarizing and taking advantage of cows and bees is not a vegan thing to do. So the whole promised land idea is literally not vegan. So the God of the Bible isn't vegan, and I can confidently say that. And so where are we? Where does that leave us? I don't have anything against Christians and anything against Muslims or Jewish people. I just feel like they're being taken advantage of. And if they knew and educated themselves that their God is a mass murderer, maybe they would question themselves out of their faith. And that's a dangerous place to be, right? Like, it's when you're not certain of your faith, you feel like your whole world has been ripped out from underneath your feet. And I've been there, so believe me, I know how it feels. And that's why I came to the conclusion to side with the truth, and you'll always be right. That's my website slogan. Because if you side with the truth, then it takes the ego out of everything. So people can have different opinions, but if you take the position where I am going to side with whatever the truth is on this matter, then it takes your ego out of everything and allows you the freedom to be wrong. And I've been wrong a lot in my life, and that's how I came to that conclusion to side with the truth. So if the truth is that the God of the Bible is a mass murderer, like, how many people does he need to murder for you to agree with me that he's a mass murderer? Is Noah's flood not enough? And you can say, well, God didn't really do that. So that's why I keep referring back to the scripture, because when the God of the Bible has somebody write down, the Lord said, I killed them. Write this down. I am going to flood the earth, and I am going to kill everyone except for Noah. And it's written in the Bible, and I'm referring to that, saying, well, God of the Bible said that he's going to kill people, and then he killed people, right? So either we're talking about the God of the Bible, or we're not. So either we're talking about the thing that's written down, or we're not. So either we're going to talk about an idol that you made up in your mind, or we're going to talk about the God of the Bible. So pick one. And when people talk about idols that they've made up in their mind, that's fine. You can have an idol that's made up in your mind, and so can I. My God is a pumpkin that lives on the cloud over there and eats Philly cream cheese. And maybe I've loosely based that off of some scriptures that I've read in the Quran and the Torah. Maybe I have. And you can't argue with that because I'm just making it up on the spot. So this is why we have to differentiate, and I keep coming back to scripture, although I maybe disagree with it. So look at my website, and there's a blog that's called The Infinite System Theory, and you'll see where I'm standing on, where my position is on all this stuff right now. I feel like we're living in an infinite system, and beings that are in the system longer game the system to vampire off your energy and trick you into following after them for some greater reasons, which I can explain in other videos. Thanks for watching.